Here are just some of the discussion questions that I've asked students about this passage. I like yours. There's a lot in common. Now we go on to a little bit of writing. Not a lot. Way more about the quality of what you say here rather than the quantity of what you say. Several of you mentioned reading the prompt carefully and getting students in the habit of reading the prompt carefully. That is a tough habit to get students into, I know. It's a great habit to get students into, though. And so, let's slow down a little bit here and talk about this prompt. Is there anything that you see in this prompt that might give your students a bit of trouble in terms of comprehension? Yeah, go ahead. Popular. Relevant is a great vocabulary term for students to own. Popular is a term that can be really gotten at by doing what? Relating it to something that they know. I think you also get some context clues in the passage itself for what is meant by popular. Both good answers. Let's talk about relevant. That's a tough word. What does it mean? Accurate. And that's a good definition. Before you answer with relevant details for the passage. Related. Stay on topic. Yeah, I like these definitions. So let's say we go back to the question. How did Babe Ruth help baseball become a popular sport? Let's say that you would answer that question by saying, because he was really good at it. What would relevant details be if that were your answer?
We had 714 home runs.
Sure. His famous 714 home runs would be one example, one detail that would show how he was really good at baseball. So the relevant details are the accurate details, the related details. It always depends on how you're going to answer the question. So however you're going to answer the question, for your details to be relevant, there needs to be a connection back to your answer. Okay. Anything else that you want to talk about with this prompt before we go on? Let me ask a related question based on what we've talked about so far. Do you feel that if your students had a good working understanding of the terms popular and relevant, that they would be in better shape?
Sure. Especially if we just had a discussion.
Especially if we just had the discussion.
That's right.
I have an unrelated question. Am I still going to have access to this after we're done here today?
The PowerPoint? Yes.
Okay,
I'll send it to the school.
thank you.
I thought you were going to ask, is Georgia going to win tonight?
And the answer is?
I saw that the line went down to 3.5. It was 4.5. I don't know what that means. The odds makers think it's going to be a little tighter than originally thought. Quick unrelated comment. Why are they starting this game so late?
So we can go
Imagine what we will like tomorrow. I can imagine.
See you bright and early.
You'll see me early, but it might not be right.
We have one here that's going. She's got to skip out.
Allison, you're going?
Yeah, so when she gets off, she's going in a few minutes. What?
I was going to say, you need to get on the road like
She needs to go.
an hour ago. All right.
I heard something cute come to school. It said on the 8th day, God created Georgia Bulldogs.
That's great. I liked the governor declared last Friday Georgia Football Day. Did everybody wear it? Well, you weren't in school. Okay, let me say this. Just those short ones, 2 point on end of grade. This would be worth 2 points. If this were an end of grade assessment question, just be worth 2. They are structured, these short constructive response questions are structured in very similar ways. From question to question to question to question. There's always going to be something, like the vast majority of the time, the first sentence is going to ask you a question that you need to answer. You'll see the question mark at the end. And then the second sentence is almost always going to ask you to support your answer. What would be kind of a gentler, kinder, more accessible synonym for support? Justify,
Back up.
back up, explain, prove,
Prove, that's a good one.
prove it.
They can prove stuff.
You got to prove it with what? With details from what you just read. Don't leave that behind. One other thing before we go on is this. Plural form. Plural form. More than one. I think the vast majority of the time, if the students just bring in 2, if they are indeed relevant details, the kid's going to be in good shape. The kid is going to be in good shape. You don't need to go on and on and on and on and on. Right? Okay, let's look at some actual student responses to this question. Here we go. Oh, first alignment. That should be a period there, rather than the forward slash, my mistake. Oh, sorry. Short constructive response, as we said earlier, at least on a grade assessment, they're always connected to the reading standards. So what's interesting is that anything, could I borrow this?
Sure.
Anything that could work as a discussion question could also work as a short constructive response question because they're connected to the same standards. The rubric for just short constructive response, at least as it's used on end of grade assessments, there's an example. I want to talk about this just very briefly. You can basically modify this rubric for all of your questions by doing the following. Pay attention to bullets, the first bullet for each score point. At score point 2, give sufficient evidence of the ability to do what? Whatever the prompt's asking. So all you need to do is sub out whatever your prompt is asking for what you see here. Score point 1 gives limited evidence of the ability to do whatever your prompt is asking. There are some things about this rubric that I'm not nuts about. Anytime I've got a rubric, I feel like I should be pretty clear on the terms and what separates one score point from the next. Sometimes I think that some of the terms in this rubric, I'm not entirely clear that you and I would give the same definition.
Right.
I think we need to define some of these terms then. So several of you said yes. So which ones are sufficient? Limited. What do we do get some clues from the prompt though. So let's go back. According to this prompt, what would be sufficient in terms of the details? More than one. Go with that. Let me put a final point on it. More than one.
Relevant.
Relevant. There are plenty of kids in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade who bring in tons of textual details. None of them are relevant to what you've been asked to do. You're not going to get more than a 0 in that case. That's why I like us slowing down and talking about reading the prompt carefully. You got to be solid on the prompt before you move forward. Oh, let's do just a touch of brainstorming here. What would be, other than he was really good at baseball, what other answers could work in response to this question? Maybe that's the only one that would kind of work.
He was passionate about it.
Yeah, I think you could say that he was passionate about the game, and so he helped it become popular. Yeah, I think that you could make that answer work. Yeah.
Also being on the championships, 7 league championships.
Yeah.
That makes it people want to watch, and
I agree.
4 World Series.
Yeah. Yep.
It says in here, his ability to hit home runs drew fans to the ballpark.
And some students will only focus on his home run accomplishments, and that's it. And that would be fine. Some students will focus more broadly on his baseball accomplishments and go outside of talking about just home runs. Okay. There's the first response. It got 0.
This is my cat. That comes from my place. Well, yeah.
You're enough to be in the league as a pitcher and an outfielder, or is that big? And is that but what if the scorer doesn't know him? That's why too much.
All hope is not lost here, though. We have some aspect of this response that's actually on point. What part of this response is actually on point? Yeah, he did an excellent job on the field. That could absolutely work as an answer. Now what does the student need to do? Support it. How did he do an excellent job on the field? That's what relevant means in this case. So if you said he did an excellent job on the field, for the details from the text to be relevant, they need to show how he did excellent on the field. There needs to be that connection there. There's another one. This one got 1 point out of 2. Yeah, put a finer point on that one relevant detail. He was really good at baseball. How do we know that? 714 home runs. Feedback to this student should focus on what?
Great answer, give me more detail.
Yeah, even just I can't tell you how many times I've seen my own students who are perfectly capable of writing a 2-point answer, only give me one textual detail. That's it. And then we go back and we keep talking about plural form. If you can do one, you can do two. If you can do one, you can do two. So we can do this. Come on. We got this. All right, one more. What? Oh no.
Invisible ink.
I don't know what happened there. The 2 was just that answer, similar kind of answer with another textual detail. Not that big of a mystery with regard to what a 2 looks like. Okay, so we read, we talked, we've written. We're basically done with text 1 now. Could this unfold over multiple days rather than one day? Sure. But we're always integrating. There are these skills, reading, talking, writing, language, they're never divorced from one another. Questions, comments, concerns? Before we go on to text number 2. Oh, hang on. There's the 2. about this one? All right. If you would, flip over to passage B. Babe Ruth, Salt and Swat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 10 minutes.
What does that mean?
What I want you to do with your teammates is to fill out the organizer for text 2. First, you should read it, the poem that is, and then go back. What kind of pre-reading questions would be good to ask the students? What kind of discussion questions would be good to ask students? Aim for 2 or 3 discussion questions. Then what I want you to do is write out a short constructed response question, all related to passage B now. And then we'll look at the essay together. I'll put the reading standards back up on the...
Okay. And 2.5 yards of here.
I said if it worked.
Yeah, I do agree.
You'll notice that I transitioned over to the reading standards for literary texts now, rather than informational, because we've got a poem here. Yes. Oh, yeah. In fact, I mean...
What does it mean? What does that mean? Because that was always hot. It's hard.
Sorry to interrupt again. I would like one of your discussion questions to connect to reading standard 6 for informational texts, where students are comparing and contrasting points of view on how these texts treat a similar subject. So how do they treat this subject in a similar way? What about different ways? That is going to be a really good discussion question to ask students as they get ready for the essay.
That could be.
This would be hard to understand.
If you don't know anything about the structure of the there will be Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I just posted the air for the third time. We've got it up to 66 now, so hopefully we'll get fingers crossed.
Yeah, our air has a That's fine. We can all, well, see, that's the thing, ours is when we came to work, we supposed to do.
Oh, you want to add a master? She was screaming, and he was walking the door, and she's been screaming. We just started. I'm trying to get a spanker. You know what she's doing now? She's taking her shins to bite you off. But guess what? Your baby's getting popped her mouth for that. She's gonna like bite that. Shake her bite her. I'll pop her right out. I'll pop her right out. What are you doing? She doesn't even have one in. And I said, she will eventually. I'm just going there and stopping.
That will be.
Hey, she goes, I'll pop her and she goes, Mel, I thought Dixon hollers all the time, like, that's just his tone of voice, he's like, it's great because he gets hollered and hollered at lunch on Sunday.
You got it?
Oh, you're
Hey, more basic, the better, I think.
my mother
Give me about 3 more minutes. Remember, you're also writing a short writing question.
decided that she likes to class every night now.
She getting close to 9 months yet, because it's 9 month wait period. That took me out about, I read about 5 weeks from like 8 or 9. That is a PETA period for it, but it lasts about 6 weeks. It was worse than
Right. Yep.
4 nights until night before last. I took people laughing in her room, slept all night last night, just slept all night. Go ahead and get my phone later. So maybe they need
I've been reading the flags and stress away.
Which of those made him
can also write that on.
I do, yeah, I do lavender breeze
You can't do this.
on guards and immune system breeze respiratory.
Now, I use the stuff that's for my respiratory, but honestly,
She did too. I rub it on.
We're doing all
That's about all. You don't really want it. Carrots and raisins. That's what the old bread smells like.
I wanted them, and I put them in while but you really can't get the smell.
Yeah,
And like, he, it smells like, if the one he renamed, he gives you that.
Makes sense. I mean,
When do you go on your trip?
that makes a ton of
Did you give
sense.
up on it?
Yeah, you would tell me questions.
I got focus. We'll start taking my
I started noticing work too.
Sure.
Makes
sense.
What they think are
Okay, time. Let's go around to every table. Each table will give us one of their discussion questions. And, oh, actually, let's do this. This table and this table, we're going to do pre-reading. And then these three, or this table and this table, we're going to do discussion. And then we're going to do short writing.
Got it.
Got it? Okay, let's start with y'all. Pre-reading, go ahead. What is the structure of this text? What a good pre-reading question. Why? Very different from the other passage. Yeah, definitely. Getting students thinking about, okay, we got a change in genre here. Going over to poetry. You're gonna, and how are you going to read it differently? How would you expect to read it differently? Run, rhythm, stanzas. Yeah.
We also said how many stanzas are in the text. Get on talking about that.
How many stanzas do we have here? It's good. Really good. Good pre-reading question. What about y'all?
We add some of the same ones, and then we also ask what you think is going to be about kind of the picture.
Yeah. And then, y'all had a really good pre-reading question as well, along the lines of we've got a similar topic here.
What does it mean by as bad as always hot? I don't know which one you're.
Sorry, no, that's a good one too.
Okay, I don't remember.
But we were talking about, is this passage talking about,
When we're comparing and contrasting.
Right.
Because how it differed from, how we know about what we know about Babe Ruth from the first passage.
that's right. So what do we know about Babe Ruth from the first passage?
What can we expect from?
What can we expect about learning about Babe Ruth in this passage, given what we've learned about him in the first passage? That's a really nice connection to draw with students. It's a good one. Okay, discussion question.
Oh, just one, you pick one, let's see, we did,
Pick your best one.
if they're about equally not best. Alright, to jump at the point of view, literary, standard, I said, based on the poem, how did the writer feel about Babe Ruth, give evidence from the story, just to say that this is a positive, but I'm sure there could be some negative articles about him as well,
Sure.
based on what the writer's point of view will be.
Yep, I love it. What seems to be the point of view of this author?
I love it.
Van. Yeah, good. Discussion question 2.
discussion questions too, okay. That was where I put, what does it mean by his bad is always hot to bring out? But we teach self-contained, so we try to, we have to be from the text completely.
I tell you what though, the mark of a good discussion question is that it is tying the student's attention back to the text.
Yeah, we had the same one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his bat was always hot
Yeah.
is figurative language, right? That's a good question. That ties in with standard 4. You know, it's interesting. How vocabulary is used takes on a different meaning when reading fiction compared to nonfiction. When you read fiction, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, that's where you're getting a whole lot of figurative language. And why would this writer be using this figurative language? Compared to nonfiction, where you get what kind of language? Kind of more formal, a little bit more technical. Yeah. Good. Let me say this. Note that reading standard 4 is less about students knowing the definition of words and phrases, as it is, why is this writer using this particular word or phrase? To what end? To what effect? Language standard 4 is all about strategies